All right, back on the Young Turks. I am your host, Cenk Uygur. Now we've got a great guest for you guys, Jason Linkins from Huffington Post. We're going to talk about a couple of his articles. Jason, welcome to the Young Turks.
Sorry?
I said welcome.
Oh, hey, it's great to be here. You'll have to forgive me. I'm going a little bit snow madness up here. I'm underneath the ice and whatnot.
Okay.
I just use the word transportated in conversation.
Jason, is this the first time we've ever had you on the show?
It is the first time, yeah.
That's a bit of a crime because I read your stuff all the time. So.
Hey, well, thanks for that. I'm really glad to be here.
All right, fantastic. All right, so let's do the Citizens United thing real quick because I want to get to kicking Broder's ass in a second.
Got it.
So you've got a curious argument here on how Citizens United, the case of the Supreme Court said where the corporate money can flood our political campaigns, how that might ironically help newspapers. Walk me through that.
All right. Well, I had actually been having a conversation with my editor, Dan Frumkin. He had told me about Henry Banta over at Neiman Watchdog, who had floated with him this, obviously a tongue-in-cheek idea that maybe Citizens United could save print journalism. The idea being is that with this new floodgate of corporate money that's going to be, infesting the entire political discourse now, maybe some of that money could be induced in some such way, maybe through tax breaks or whatnot, to drive that money to print journalism. Maybe if our new corporate overlords would see it their way to maybe just do print ads in Washington Post, New York Times. I don't know the names of other newspapers that may still be alive in America, but those as well. Maybe we could save journalism. Obviously, it's somewhat of an ironic idea, as you point out.
Right, and so that would be a blessing in disguise in some very ironic way. But realistically, Jason, this is going to help corporate media tremendously, isn't it?
Oh yeah, big time. I make the argument that if we were to flood the pages of newspapers even with this sort of content, it would sort of be semi-indistinguishable from what they're already doing. But while Citizens United is this type of ruling that should make the Supreme Court justices who agreed to it feel bad about themselves, it does offer perhaps a glimmer of hope that we can choke down and maybe pass through our alimentary canal in the hopes of saving journalism, but probably not.
Right. The much more likely scenario is that the television networks, et cetera, get much, much larger because they'll have a lot more ads. And not only will they have more political ads, but since that area will be flooded, they'll be able to charge more for the ads.
Politics is, in that way, about to become a staggering and baffling ordeal for the American people. And I don't know if they've actually finished coding up that new Dante's Inferno video game, but I hope they included a place in it, some circle in video game hell for everyone out there who's saying that this ruling was a great achievement for the First Amendment. It's actually going to significantly drown out the voices of ordinary people who don't have staggering sums of money to buy television ads during prime time.
All right. Now, let's move on to what the current state of the corporate media is, and no one represents the Washington establishment media better than David Broder. Now, growing up, I was told that David Broder was a liberal. That turned out to be a giant joke. First off, before we get to a Sarah Palin article, generally speaking, where do you think David Broder stands on the political spectrum?
David Broder, to me, is desperately trying to suck everything into the squishy center of the political spectrum. He worships the notion of bipartisanship. He's got his nose really stuck up the ass of the establishment as far as beltway culture, political media culture is concerned. What I find hilarious about this is that there's just no there's no faddish movement that when he perceives something that might be uniting people in this wishy-washy way, he signs on to it immediately. 2 years ago, he was he was big upping the Unity Conference, which is one of the more squishy things that I have to say has ever come down the pike. Now he's obviously somewhat infatuated with Sarah Palin, and because she was the flavor of the week last week. The biggest problem with Broder is that he's sort of erected the highest and tallest and most receptive weather vane for conventional wisdom, and as soon as the winds start blowing, he starts going with them. I think that one of his big acolytes is David Brooks in that regard.
We're talking to Jason Linkins. He writes about the media for Huffington Post. Jason, I always wonder about guys like Broder. Like, does he understand that bipartisanship is a cover for let's make things a little bit more Republican? That that the Bush guys never ever asked for bipartisanship, didn't give a damn about it, and that if they ever got it, which they did on many occasions, unfortunately, it was because they bullied the Democrats into it, and that he gets that asking nicely is a dumb way to go, and he thinks, well, it doesn't matter, I'm really covering for the Republicans here. Or after covering Washington for all this time, is he really that clueless?
I come down more on the side of the scale of him being just an extraordinarily vacuous and oblivious person. I detect that he honestly believes that there's something active and important to be done through bipartisan negotiations. He seems to not be aware of the fact that, as you say, the GOP has run this game very tight, and they have very strong party discipline, and they don't give in on these situations. Over the past year, it's really impossible to see where bipartisanship had a chance. But it's not on the White House. They have, unfortunately, bent over backwards to accommodate the opposition. They did so out of, I think a sense of being a new spirit of cooperation. And if you look at things like the health care reform bill in both the House and the Senate, it's loaded up with the types of things that the GOP wants in the bill. There's been tremendous accommodations made. And if you go back and look at the stimulus package, tremendous accommodations were made a year ago to get that passed. It didn't earn a single vote, and it's not going to earn a single vote.
See, that's why I'm amazed by guys like Broder. I mean, how could he see that and pretend that, Republicans are acting in good faith and that the Democrats should still reach out in bipartisanship? How could he not see over all these years how far the center, the so-called center, the Washington, D.C. center, has moved so far to the right? I mean, when this whole thing started, I was a Republican. Now I'm considered way left on the Democratic Party, where the president is nowhere near me. He's so far to the right of me. So this is absolutely crazy. And the filibuster is a great example of it. These guys that are in the establishment in Washington, they see that when the Republicans are in the majority, they write articles about how the filibuster is extreme and radical and shouldn't be used. Right. When the Republicans flip over to the minority, the very next day they write articles about how it's perfectly normal and how you always need 60 votes in the Senate. So that makes, again, it goes to the thing of, it can't be that stupid, can they?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And even not just the filibuster, take reconciliation. The Bush administration passed a number of what they would call important measures through budget reconciliation. Clinton got his budget passed through reconciliation. It's seen as a legitimate way of legislating. But Broder and his ilk have sort of led this charge against the idea of reconciliation being a valid form of legislation. I think it was Broder who said that it didn't account for the process afterwards of ironing out. And that's just not a concept that you learn in civics class. 50 votes plus the vice president, you get to do whatever you want. That's the situation. The Bush administration even tried to pass ANWR through budget reconciliation. They couldn't get the votes for it at the time, but had ANWR passed through budget reconciliation, it wouldn't have made the oil less oily. It would have made the takeover of the Alaskan environment less of what it is. It would have been a perfectly legitimate thing.
Right.
It's really hard to explain and hard to fathom. I just think that with David Broder, it's one of those situations where, on the ride too long. And so you've got this sort of like apathy in the brain muscle that's causing him dismay and causing the rest of us reading him dismay.
All right, Jason, finally, let's get to his article on Sarah Palin. After all this foolishness that I've been reading from him for, unfortunately, over a decade now all of a sudden he decides that Sarah Palin's got her pulse on the, her finger on the pulse of the nation. Just as poll numbers come out indicating how wildly unpopular she is. Why has he decided to fall in love with Sarah Palin at this late juncture?
I guess because he's vastly dumb. I mean, I don't really have an explanation. The hugely ironic thing are the poll numbers you just mentioned. After the Tea Party weekend, Sarah Palin was the one thing that didn't get some sort of bounce out. Reading his article, it's very strange some of the claims he makes. He talks about he talks about how she was like on board with the McCain campaign from start to finish, that she was laboring to do more than establish her own place. But that's just not true. She abandoned the campaign mission weeks before Election Day, and that whole thing gave rise to this concept called going rogue that I think was the title of a very, widely read and widely talked about book that came out sometime last year. He also talks about how Sarah Palin said that she wasn't on the Fox News Sunday appearance that she wasn't driven from office by outside forces, but that's not what she said at all. She specifically went on to cite lawyers and legislators who are putting pressure on her and like hunting her for ethics violations. It's just not true. I don't know what Broder was reading or watching, but it's not true. He wrote an article and was not paying attention to any of the actual events that took place over the past weekend.
If you want to read a dissection of that article, paragraph by paragraph, go to HuffingtonPost.com and read Jason Lincoln's piece on it, because he shredded Broder on it. He didn't get anything right, and Broder is unreal, man. This cinches the deal. For how clueless he was, now he thinks Palin's the right way to go. Unreal. So, Jason, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're out of time, unfortunately.
No problem.
You. All right, we'll be right back.